Let me start with a question that hits harder than you'd expect. Why do tiny problems feel enormous, and why do we lose our peace over things we can't control? If that feels uncomfortably familiar, you're not alone. Humans have been wrestling with that same chaos for thousands of years, and one man, sitting in a freezing military tent on the edge of the Roman Empire, figured out a blueprint for staying calm in the middle of all of it. His name was Marcus Aurelius. His weapon wasn't a sword, it was a journal. What makes Meditations so powerful isn't that it was written by a philosopher. It was written by an emperor who never intended for anyone else to read a single word. These were his private reminders on how not to lose his mind while ruling the most complicated society on earth. No fancy theory, no motivational fluff, just survival strategies for the mind. And as strange as it sounds, his advice hits even harder in the age of notifications, comparison culture, and endless stress. The call to adventure. If you're watching this, you've already felt it. The tension between who you are and who you're trying to become. Stoicism says, that tension is the mountain, and the climb matters. Marcus believed that every person has what he called an inner citadel, a place inside that nothing and no one can touch. Not insults, not failure, not disappointment, not even fate itself. Think about that for a second. If the world outside can throw anything at you, but the world inside stays steady, what could realistically stop you? But here's where it gets real. Most of us never develop that inner citadel. Instead, we outsource our mood to everything external. Someone ignores us, we spiral. Plans change, we panic. Someone disagrees, we explode. Someone succeeds, we feel insecure. Someone insults us, we crumble. It's exhausting, not because life is hard, but because we're giving power to everything except ourselves. Marcus flips that entire system upside down. The first lesson, control is the superpower. He writes, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not that thing that disturbs you, but your judgment of it. Pause and let that sit. Life isn't stressful because life is stressful. Life is stressful because of how we interpret it. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You could narrate it as, they disrespected me, or as, they're in a rush, it has nothing to do with me. Same event, different story, different life. Here's the quiet Stoic trick. Peace isn't what happens around you, it's what happens inside you. The second lesson, temporary everything. Marcus was obsessed with time, not in a dramatic, we all die someday way, more in a practical, stop wasting life way. He reminds himself again and again that emperors before him, men with armies, power, and monuments, are now nothing but forgotten dust. At first that sounds dark, until you realize he's using it as fuel. If everything is temporary, then embarrassment doesn't matter, opinions don't matter, failure doesn't matter, perfection doesn't matter, and hesitation is the real enemy. Because the clock is already ticking. Whether you do something with your life or not, time doesn't negotiate. Here's where it gets motivational without trying to be. Marcus says, don't waste your time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Translation for our era. Stop talking about it. Stop planning it. Stop researching it. Start becoming it. The refusal of the call. Of course, we resist change. We say stuff like, I'll start when I feel ready. Things need to calm down first. It's just bad timing. I'll fix it after this phase. The Stoics would laugh gently at that, because from their perspective, life never calms down. Life is chaos. The point is to learn to stand in the middle of it without losing your center. You don't train to swim by waiting for the ocean to stop moving. Mini pattern interrupt. Let's pause for 1 second. When was the last time something small ruined your entire mood? A comment, a delay, a text, a look, a tone. Imagine how different your life would feel if those things lost their power. That's the Stoic promise. Not to make life easier, but to make you harder to shake. Now that Marcus has our attention, the journey deepens. Because the Stoics don't just want you to think differently, they want you to experience life differently. And here's where they drop one of their most uncomfortable truths. The world doesn't owe you easy conditions. Marcus understood that suffering isn't a glitch in the system. It is the system. He writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That line became the foundation of modern resilient psychology. Obstacles are not detours. Obstacles are training. Obstacles are feedback. Obstacles are the curriculum of mastery. Think about the gym. Muscles don't grow because the weights are light. They grow because the weights push back. Life works the same way. But here's where most of us make the mistake. We treat challenges as evidence we should quit. The Stoic flips the script. Challenges are evidence you've begun. Wait till you hear this. The hero's first real enemy, internal chaos. When Marcus wakes up in the morning, he doesn't write inspirational affirmations about manifesting success. He writes about dealing with people. One of his most famous entries begins with, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, 'Today I shall meet with the meddling, the ungrateful, the arrogant, the dishonest, the jealous, and the surly.'" That sounds cynical, but it's actually liberation disguised as realism. Marcus is mentally immunizing himself. Modern psychology calls this cognitive inoculation, anticipating negative experiences so they don't destabilize you. Imagine walking into your day already knowing there will be friction. Suddenly you're not surprised by it, you're ready for it. Because the problem isn't difficult people. The problem is expecting them not to exist. The view from above. When life feels unbearable, Marcus uses a trick every Stoic swears by. Zoom out. He imagines rising above the earth, seeing cities and nations, births and funerals, wars and weddings, and realizing that his tiny personal frustration is microscopic in the vast span of time. This is perspective as medicine. You know how Google Maps lets you switch from street view to satellite? Stoicism teaches you to do that with your problems. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "Where does this actually fit in the grand scheme of things?" Almost always the answer is, "It barely registers." But here's where it gets even more powerful. The practice of objective judgment. Stoicism teaches that things aren't inherently good or bad. We paint them with meaning. Marcus reminds himself, "Remove the opinion, and then there is the removal of the hurt." That sentence shatters half of modern anxiety. A breakup is not destruction, it's a transition. A rejection is not humiliation, it's information. A failure is not identity, it's calibration. Nothing has meaning until you narrate it. And here's the twist, you can rewrite your narration at any time. Pattern interrupt number 2. Quick question. When something bothers you, what's your first reaction? Do you A, react, B, overreact, or C, react and then overanalyze the reaction? Be honest, most of us are C. Stoicism introduces option D, interpret consciously before reacting at all. It sounds small, but it's revolutionary. The villain of the story, the ego. The Stoics believe the ego is the first enemy you must defeat. Why? Because the ego demands validation, praise, status, approval, recognition, certainty. And every time the world doesn't deliver those, you suffer. Marcus counters ego with a simple mantra. Be like the vine that produces grapes and asks for nothing in return. Do the work. Do the right thing. Let go of applause. There's an intense kind of freedom in that. Because once you don't need validation, you're unstoppable. The turning point, amor fati. Then comes one of Stoicism's most misunderstood ideas, amor fati, love of fate. Not tolerance of fate, not acceptance of fate, love of fate. Marcus doesn't just say, "I guess this had to happen." He says, "This is exactly the thing I needed to grow." The obstacle doesn't block the path. The obstacle is the path. Suddenly adversity becomes fuel. Pain becomes information. Uncertainty becomes an arena. Change becomes opportunity. This is where Stoicism stops being philosophy and becomes power. Once you understand amor fati, something interesting happens. You stop bracing for life, and you start participating in it. Instead of asking, why me, you start asking, what now? And that shift is everything. Because life doesn't reward the person who waits for perfect conditions. Life rewards the person who works with the conditions they're given. But here's where it gets real. The Stoic superpower: unselfish action. Marcus writes again and again that the point of life isn't comfort, it's contribution. He believed humans are like bees. We're meant to work together for something bigger than ourselves. He writes, "The fruit of this life is good character and unselfish action." You don't do the right thing for applause. You don't do the right thing for gratitude. You don't do the right thing for legacy. You do it because it's who you are. And ironically, people with that mindset often leave the biggest legacies. Funny how that works. Stoic humility versus modern influence culture. This is where Stoicism slams into modern reality. Today, we're obsessed with perception, likes, followers, influence, clout, image, aesthetics. Marcus had all the clout a human could possibly have, and still reminded himself, fame is vapor. The applause of the many is noise. The approval of the few means nothing. Wait, the Emperor of Rome is telling us followers don't matter? He continues, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about other people." Translation: stop playing the comparison game. There is no winning it. The second battle, against time. If there's one topic Marcus obsesses over, it's this one. Life is short. Not in a poetic way, in a statistical, biological, and brutally practical way. He writes about how many emperors ruled before him, how many heroes conquered, how many artists created, and how every one of them became dust. This isn't meant to depress you. It's meant to liberate you. One of his sharpest lines, "Since you are not going to live 3,000 years, observe how short the present is." Or, in modern terms, stop wasting your finite life on things that don't matter. But here's the twist. Knowing life is short isn't enough. You have to live differently because of it. This is where most people break. When confronted with mortality, most people do one of three things. 1. Panic. 2. Distract themselves. 3. Pretend they have endless time. Stoicism offers a fourth option. 4. Prioritize what actually matters. Marcus writes, "Do not act as if you will live 10,000 years." And then he gives the punchline. While you have life, while you have breath, do good. Notice he doesn't say, make money, or collect experiences, or build a brand. He says, do good. Imagine how different civilization would be if that were the metric of success. Pattern interrupt number 3. Quick test. Imagine someone handed you a list of everything you've worried about in the last year. Then imagine someone else handed you a list of everything you'll remember and care about in the last decade of your life. How much overlap would there be? Probably not much. That's the Stoic intelligence, not removing emotion, but removing unnecessary emotion. The inner citadel. Now we get to the heart of the book. Marcus believed every human has an internal fortress, a space that cannot be invaded by circumstance, insult, misfortune, or fate. He calls it the inner citadel. Your fortress isn't built of walls or soldiers. It's built of judgment, interpretation, perception, choice. If the world outside is chaotic, fine, the fortress still stands. If people betray you, fine, the fortress still stands. If plans collapse, fine, the fortress still stands. The Stoic hero isn't the warrior who conquers the world, it's the one who's unconquered by the world. But here's where the plot twists. The enemy isn't the world, it's your judgment of it. Marcus writes, "If you are pained by external things, it is not the things themselves that afflict you, but your judgment about them. And it is within your power to erase this." Modern psychology discovered the same thing 1800 years later and called it cognitive reframing. Stoicism just beat them to it. You don't control the external world, but you control what you label it, what you believe about it, what you make it mean, how you respond. That is sovereignty. Not the fake kind, not the macho kind, not the Instagram kind. Internal sovereignty, the kind no one can take. Once Marcus lays out the architecture of the inner citadel, he doesn't ask you to admire it. He asks you to live in it. Which leads us to the practical Stoic game plan. The Stoic morning ritual. Marcus starts one section with a line that's both hilarious and brutally honest. When you wake in the morning, tell yourself, "Today I shall meet with meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly people." Most modern self-help tells you to manifest perfect vibes. Marcus just tells you the truth. Not to make you cynical, but to make you unshakable. If you expect challenges, you don't crumble when they arrive. You prepare for reality instead of fantasizing about it. It's emotional weightlifting. The Stoic social strategy. Marcus believed most people act poorly not because they're evil, but because they're ignorant. They don't know what good is. They don't know what virtue is. They don't know how to be better. So why hate them? He writes, "Teach them, or bear with them." And then he reminds himself that humans are meant to work together like two rows of teeth. It's such a weird analogy, but it works. Because if even the Emperor of Rome dealt with annoying co-workers, there's hope for the rest of us. The view from above. Next, Marcus deploys one of the most powerful psychological tools ever invented: zooming out. Literally. He imagines looking down on Earth from high above, then higher still, until everything shrinks into pixel-sized dots. The effect? Your biggest problems suddenly look small. That argument you had, that embarrassing comment, that project that didn't land, that person who doesn't like you. When placed against billions of lives, millions of years, and a universe the size of, well, the universe, it becomes manageable again. Modern therapy calls this distancing. NASA calls it the overview effect. Marcus just called it perspective. The 3 pillars of a Stoic life. By the end of Meditations, 3 pillars show up over and over. 1. Objective judgment. See reality without drama, without decoration, without emotional fan fiction. Not, "This is a disaster," but "This is what happened." 2. Unselfish action. Do the right thing because it's right, not because it gets applause, not because it boosts your brand, not because it makes you look virtuous. Like a vine that produces grapes and asks for nothing in return. 3. Willing acceptance. Embrace what fate delivers, not passively, not lazily, but with strength. Amor fati. Let it come. I'll make use of it. Together, these 3 pillars don't make life easier. They make you stronger. Final pattern interrupt. Quick reality check. Imagine someone had total access to your thoughts for one day. Would they see a person who is constantly offended, endlessly comparing, stressed about strangers' opinions, chasing things outside their control? Or would they see someone who is focused on what they can control, unmoved by noise, centered, useful, present, hard to disturb? Stoicism is about becoming the second person on purpose. The closing reflection. Meditations hits hard because it's not written by a monk in a cave. It's written by a man in the battlefield of leadership, stress, politics, and mortality. Marcus Aurelius struggled with anger, insecurity, procrastination, grief, responsibility, fatigue, self-doubt. And instead of pretending to be invincible, he wrote to himself like he was a student. That's why the book works. It doesn't promise a perfect life. It teaches you how to carry life better. And here's the real secret. You don't need to become a Stoic philosopher. You just need to ask better questions. What can I control? What can I let go? What am I wasting time on? What actually matters? How can I contribute? How do I want to respond? Those questions build the inner citadel, brick by brick. The final takeaway. Peace doesn't come from vacations or escapes or achievements. Peace comes from sovereignty. When your inner world is ordered, your outer world loses the power to break you. Or, as Marcus said, nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. The world is still chaotic. People are still unpredictable. Life is still short. But you can become calm in the chaos. And that's what it means to think like a Stoic. If this hit home, don't just scroll. Sit with it for a moment. Let it change how you enter your next conversation, your next challenge, your next morning. And if you want more tools for living wisely in a messy world, hit subscribe and keep going deeper, one thought at a time. Think like a Stoic, calm in chaos,